open your Bible or flip on your smartphone or tablet or whatever you got going. Just find Ecclesiastes chapter 2. All right, as soon as everybody looks like they're landed there, we'll pray. And waiting on Roger. He's got this really troubled look on his face. I'm picking on you, Roger. Oh, yeah, yeah. All right, let's pray together. Father, thank you for this privilege, Lord, to dig into your word together, to seek you. And I pray, Lord, that would be our heart's desire as we come, that we would have an intention to draw near to you because of the great promise you give us that if we draw near to you, you will draw near to us. Lord, that we would experience your presence and allow your Holy Spirit to minister your truth to us, and with the application that would show us how do we respond to what we hear from you, what you minister to us. Lord, I pray that we would be doers of the word, not just hearers only. And Lord, when it comes to these things, I pray that you'd show us how to respond and act upon your word. Lord, that we might enjoy the benefits that you offer to us and escape the error, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for your great goodness and your love and your desire to minister to your people. Lord, we thank you for that. We love you for that, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 2. The book of Ecclesiastes has got some really challenging stuff to it. If you happen to be a visitor, I would encourage you to continue reading through and get the benefit of this amazing book, really a challenging book. In some ways, it seems to present the contemporary worldview because his investigation is looking at life under the sun. And so it's kind of like, oh, how do you live life like most people do without any thought of God? So what's that look like? And he pretty much goes into all the different opportunities or options that are available to us. But obviously we're going to add in not only his insights that point us to the emptiness of living without God, but also to the fulfillment of the promise we have, the good news of the gospel. So we get a chance to say not only what's wrong, but how do we find what's right? And if you think of it, we're raised in a country where we're told, quite obviously through one of our founding documents, that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness is kind of interesting way to express it to us, because we go, well, isn't that what most people want? They're trying to find happiness somewhere. It's kind of cool we live in a country where they say you have a right to pursue that. Some places, I guess, they don't let you do that. But still, that's kind of a heart's desire of people. It's like, well, I'd like to find happiness. And part of that is finding the meaning of life, purpose of our lives. Hoping and hopefully finding that we don't live for no purpose, for meaningless existence. And so part of, I want to share with you just kind of a simple illustration and see if it makes sense to you. Let's shift gears for a second and think about investing. Okay, so say you got a little bit of money and you had the opportunity, if opportunity presents itself to you to say, would you like to sit down with this guy who is totally successful in investing? He's never made a mistake. And you could sit down with him and counsel him, and he would actually tell you, without charging you, he would tell you how you could invest your money and get a lifetime return on that money. No risks, no loss, guaranteed. Would you want to do that? Yeah. Or would you say, no thanks. I'd much rather try things that have failed before and have never worked. I'd much rather throw my investment into that. Right? You'd think, what kind of an idiot would do that? Right? But what Solomon is going to lay out for us, and it's actually, his observations are not unique. It's not like he's the only one that's seen these things. It's something that states what is patently obvious. And other people from a non-biblical perspective have shared the same things, and so it's not a secret. And yet, many of us have lived exactly the way that Solomon says, if you're investing your life in the pursuit of happiness in that, you're going to come up empty. It's not going to be meaningful. You're going to waste your life. And so it's kind of a parallel, except in this case, we're getting counsel from God's Word where he doesn't make mistakes because he knows what life's about and he knows how to give us meaning in life and purpose in life. And so it's kind of dumb when we ignore what God says, which is a guaranteed thing, and choose to repeat the errors of others and find out by experience, yeah, he said it was going to be empty, and it is empty. So that's kind of what we're after here, or what we're going to see as we go through this chapter and really as we go through the book. We do have the right to pursue happiness. That kind of implies, and we kind of think when we hear that, I guess that means we should hope to find something, right? Find satisfaction, find meaning, and find happiness. It's kind of obvious that we're hoping that that comes true. And we've all heard stuff like this. We hear it pretty regularly, especially in our culture. Don't you know you can do anything and you can be anything that you decide to be? There are no limitations. So I'm sorry. I don't mind encouraging people to go beyond and not to limit themselves. But the truth is, we have a lot of limitations. Every one of us faces different limitations. For me, I have a limitation of my IQ. And I'm not saying I'm a complete idiot, but I'm never going to be a nuclear physicist. And I could tell myself all day long that I can do this, and it's like they'd be going, maybe you should think of ditch digging. No, anybody would tell me, it's like, no, sorry, I hate to break it to you, but you do not have the brain power, the IQ, to be a nuclear physicist. That's one of the limitations I deal with. Okay, I discovered in college, and I had some other limitations. I could never be a professional basketball player. I always had that dream that, a lot of kids do when they play sports, I'm going to be a pro, And it's like my only problems were I wasn't big enough, I wasn't fast enough, I didn't shoot well enough, I didn't dribble well enough. Other than that, I didn't have any limitations, right? So that's just a reality. They go, no. Just because we think and would like to doesn't mean that we have the opportunity. But so often for a lot of us, we live under this deception. It's a misleading, a deceitfulness of sin that says, I know you're not happy now, but if you just had a little bit more, then you would be happy. And it's tied into the nature of pleasure is that it's passing, it's temporary, and it's not satisfying. Solomon looks at it and he says it's part of this whole thing. He describes as the vanity of vanities. It's life without God is empty. It's pointless and meaningless. And we have young men and young women, particularly from the last probably 2 or 3 generations, that have been told that we came from nothing and we're going to nothing. Your life has no meaning in your creation, your accident, and when you die, it's all over, and what you live is meaningless. And so you wonder why they have despair, because they go, well, if I have no reason for being here, and I was an accident to begin with, random chance of forces and chemicals coming together, and I just happened to be here. And when I die, that's the end. Then my life has no meaning whatsoever. And Solomon describes what the conclusion of that kind of thinking is. Well, then we should just eat, drink, and be merry, try to get as much fun as we can out of life, because we're going to die. And then nothing. And we see people live that way. And they go, well, I'm just trying to have a little fun, We've heard some of our scientists, ecological scientists, environmental scientists telling us, the world's coming to an end because of global warming now. But if you go back to the 1970s, the first Earth Day, there were predictions that were made that the world was going to end in the next 10 years because of overpopulation, people were going to starve to death, there's going to be a big die-off, and they made these predictions, and they were not only wrong, they were spectacularly wrong. But the message to the young generation is you don't have a future. Life's ending, you're over, and there's nothing coming. And you wonder why they have despair. Because they go, it's all pointless, it's meaningless. And Solomon addresses that kind of thinking, and he expresses it, and he investigated. He's looking into life under the sun without God and saying, what does it mean without God? And so that's what we're going to look at. He starts with laughter and pleasure. And we tend to think of those things as good things, right? And the Bible doesn't say that they're bad. It's just they're not enough, right? Laughter, he says, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth. Mirth, happiness, laughter is really the word laughter. And he says, therefore enjoy pleasure. Let's have a fun time. Let's go party it up. Let's have a fun time. And he says, surely this also is empty, right? And so he says, I said of laughter, madness. It's crazy. And of mirth, what does it accomplish? Now, please understand, he's not saying there's no pleasure in it. He doesn't say that it's bad. What he's saying is, what does it accomplish? So think about it as this kind of a thing. There's so many things that we can look at, and what the scripture says is the passing pleasures of sin. So it means that you can experience some pleasure in it, but it goes away. And there's so much in our lives that's just like that. It's so temporary and so passing. You think of fame. I've thought about this last week. I had the chance to watch a little bit of a football game, and it happened to be the Philadelphia Eagles. They won the Super Bowl last year. Nobody cares, right? Unless you're a Philadelphia fan, you go, oh, we won. Yeah, okay, you won. The quarterback, the MVP of the Super Bowl, people are like, oh, you're awesome. Nick Foles, he was a substitute, got thrown in there, leads them to the Super Bowl. Everybody's like, you're awesome. And then this year, 3 months later, he's a substitute. And everybody's going, why aren't you a star? Last year he's like, everybody loves me. This year it's like, what's your problem, dude? And he goes, isn't that the way it is? It's just like, it was there and it's gone. And he says, that's the way this stuff is. If you're looking for satisfaction and fulfillment, you're going to find it's like, oh, gone. Okay, so it's those passing pleasures. And laughter's not a bad thing. The word, actually, it's interesting in the word. It's used in application to the craziness of drunken laughter, that's like disconnected from reality. But it's also used in the laughter of celebration. So it's not like it's a bad thing. It's just in some situations, it's not valuable. It's not helpful. So he says, obviously one of the benefits, a merry heart does good. So it's not that it's bad to be happy. He's not saying that. And he says, but even in laughter, the heart may have sorrow. So you can have laughter, and that even though I can laugh at a joke or situation, and there can be sorrow really going on in my heart. So it doesn't fix everything. And if you think about it, let's go back. If you think about it, what would your life look like if you only had laughter? Telling jokes all the time, turning everything into a joke. You can't be serious about anything. Number one, you'd probably get sick of it. But everybody else, I guarantee, would be sick of you. Right? It's like, good grief, could you just get serious for a second? Right? Because laughter's valuable in a certain setting, but it's not your whole life. It's like cotton candy. You ever seen the kids eating cotton candy, right? When they first want it, it's like, oh, this is awesome. And then before they're all the way done, most of the time, they're going, I'm sick of this. Right? Because you can't live on it. What would you do if you had a diet of cotton candy? You'd be over it. Right? And he's saying that's what it is. It's good in small amounts, but it's not to live for. Right? And so here's an example. I'm not mocking or despising or depreciating the value of any of these guys. These were brilliant comedians. Sharp-witted, clever, and yet you can see every one of them, though they lived a life devoted to making other people laugh. They'd be on stage, they'd be in nightclubs and theaters, and people would be laughing and having so much fun, and yet in their own lives they were, the first group at the top, these are all guys that overdosed because of the despair in their own lives. They ended up going into drugs and alcohol and ended up taking their lives by overdosing on drugs. The last group actually specifically intentionally took their own lives because of despair and emptiness. And these are people who made careers, famous careers, and really talented people that making other people laugh, and they go, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for them to even want to keep living. This is one of the comedians, one of these guys who were mentioned here. He says, nobody will never ever know that I existed. I have nothing to leave behind me, nothing to pass on, nobody to mourn me. That's the bitterest blow of all. You think, well, didn't you make a bunch of people laugh? Why wouldn't people be sad that you left? Because they weren't really connected. It was entertainment. And he's going, I'm just so alone and so empty, and my life's so meaningless. And you go, that's what Solomon is talking about here. It's empty. It's like smoke, or wisp of smoke that you go, there it is, and it's gone. And what does it mean? There's no substance to it. Right? He says, I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine. Okay, so you read that, you might think, oh, Solomon went on a serious party binge, and he was like getting drunk and ended up in the gutter. It's like, well, before you run that, read the rest of the sentence. Why I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine while guiding my heart with wisdom. So he wasn't just like, getting drunk, sloppy drunk kind of a guy. He's looking. He says, I wanted to see how to lay a hold of folly, grab a hold of it and see what it's really all about, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. He going, so many people go to alcohol. Solomon's going, I want to see what's in it. I want to approach it intelligently, see if there's anything good in here. It seems like folly, but I'm going to look at it and see, examine it wisely and say, is there anything good here? Because if there's something good out, I want to pull that out. Before we go to that one, let's go back one step here. If Solomon had listened to his mom, he wouldn't have made this investigation. Because it was his mom, we know her as Bathsheba, who penned Proverbs 31. And in Proverbs 31 it says this. This was written by Bathsheba to Solomon, to her son. And she says, it is not for kings, alcohol. It's not for kings. It's not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes to drink intoxicating drink, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the justice of all afflicted. See, she said, son, you are in a position of leadership in this nation, and you have a responsibility to provide justice, to make decisions, pass judgment, provide equity and fairness to people. You cannot afford to have your thinking, your judgment impaired by alcohol. Okay, so I understand biblically Christians, we're not under the law, we don't have, there's possible, yeah, I get that, all that stuff, I understand. I'm not a teetotaler, but I think sometimes these things ought to apply to us. Say, if it's not for kings, don't we have important judgment and decisions to make in our lives? Don't we want to guard against being influenced in a negative way and our judgment clouded when it comes to making decisions? Then maybe this would be a wise counsel for some of us to go, hey, I don't want to have my thought process hindered, whether it's a decision about the words that I say to my wife or a decision about the way I spend my money or how I treat people or the course of my life. I don't want it to be hindered or diminished by alcohol. Okay, so he goes on in verse 4 and 5, I made my works great. I built myself houses, planted myself vineyards. Remember, this guy's a genius, really, intellectual genius, and creative, and he has this opportunity, unlimited resources at his disposal, and he starts doing some projects because, hey, that's accomplishments. He builds houses for himself. I don't know, how many of you guys have ever built your own house? A couple, yeah, a handful, right? It's a pretty fun deal, right? You're kind of like, how do we want to, you think about a blueprint, where do you start from, what do you want it to look like, you design all those things. It's kind of fun. It's a little challenging sometimes, but for people who are, bright, you go, this is exciting, this is fun, we can do this, we can do this. Solomon's like that. He's going, houses, multiple houses for himself, planted vineyards, so he's getting into landscaping and, plant stuff, okay, cool. Gardens and orchards, planted all kinds of fruit trees in them, made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. So, he's really developing like a whole landscaping thing where it's like, a garden over here and orchards and how are we going to water all this stuff? We've got to have some pools for that, right? So think about this. Just think about how much fun you would have doing this with creativity, right? These are examples of existing gardens. They're nothing, like super deluxe, but I mean, that's kind of cool. They're building a garden. What are they building it for? So people can go there and find some tranquility, green, beautiful refreshment of natural green, water and stuff probably would be part of it. This is just somebody's effort. And guarantee these guys that created this stuff, they don't have the same intellect and creativity as Solomon, right? And you go, oh, that's gorgeous. That's beautiful. How fun would it be to walk through there, just go out there and enjoy that? The water, especially in the Middle East, water, is a rare commodity. And for you and I, it's like, come on, we all know what it's like to sit by a stream or waterfall and just hear the water going. And go, oh yeah, he'd have waterfalls in there, right? Color splashes with the different types of vegetation. This tree plants and does this and looks like that, and it complements this other tree. All this creativity that you go, I mean, this is beautiful stuff that he would have done. It's not unique to Solomon either. You probably recognize this, the Gardens of Versailles. French king decided he wanted to have a spectacular garden. Same kind of idea. This guy did not have the resources that Solomon had, and he didn't have the intellect that Solomon had. You think, well, this is pretty spectacular. It's like, oh, I bet Solomon's beat it. We're talking about some really amazing creation. And it's so common for kings and queens, royalty, to want to develop these kind of gardens. I'm not sure why. Maybe, practically speaking, maybe so people can go and chill out and it looks impressive. But I mean, Germany, Denmark, United Kingdom, Spain, Japan, Jordan, Russia. I mean, you see, it's like worldwide, this kind of desire. And so Solomon built something that was spectacular. And just a couple hundred years later, there's a guy by the name of Nebuchadnezzar who I think probably wanted to do one up Solomon, because he built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which was considered to be the 8th wonder of the world. So you go, oh, this something in this for kings to do. He mentions vineyards. I'm not a vine grower, and that kind of stuff, but I've seen, especially up in the northern part of our state here, some of those vineyards, it's like when you go visit, and it's like, this is a cool thing. I mean, you see the fruit hanging there, and it doesn't all have to be wine stuff, but it's okay. It's just beautiful. And I mean, you see the growth that takes place, and it's exciting to watch. And I mean, you see a vineyard like this. This is not a giant vineyard, and I don't know. But Solomon, everything he seemed to do, he did on a giant scale. So you think, how many hillsides of Jerusalem did he turn into vineyards? I don't know, but I'm sure he didn't have any restrictions on his resources. He talks about planting trees and building orchards. One of the trees we know would have been the pomegranate, because that's an indigenous thing there and very popular, well liked by people. So certainly pomegranate orchards. And you think this is a local, well, this is up in the Pacific Northwest, but I mean in U.S. Orchard. You see the different colors and types of trees, and they grow at different times of year. They come into harvest, and I mean, you've been around trees when they blossom, and the fragrance and the beauty of the different colors and stuff. And Solomon would have no doubt, put lots of different trees in there to make it look really awesome. And he's just having fun with this thing, right? And lots of fruit was provided. Most of the stuff would have been the type of fruit that they had. Probably not apples. Apples are kind of a cold weather crop, but the rest of the stuff, oranges come from the Middle East, grapes. I don't know about strawberries. I don't know the origin of strawberries, but a lot of fruit that they were growing. I don't know if you guys like that kind of stuff, but it's like, I love going through orchards and going, hey, you get to go pick your own stuff, fresh off the tree. And Solomon was doing all these kinds of things. The reservoirs he talks about, the pools, they're still in existence today. Okay, outside of Jerusalem, there's 3 pools there. The lower pool is 582 feet long. Think in your mind 2 football fields, and about from 148 to 207 feet wide, 50 feet deep. Right, and so they were staggered in elevation. The smallest one at the top, larger one in the middle. This biggest one is what we're talking about here at the bottom, so that the pools could fill and then drop into the next pool and then drop into the next one. The top pool is only 15 feet deep, but the estimated capacity of all 3 is about 40 million gallons of water. So yeah, he could water anything he wanted to, right? And this is the scale that this guy was working on. And he says that he acquired male and female servants, had servants born in his house. I think the emphasis is on servants here, and so he's basically saying, yeah, we had a big household, I had lots of servants. I didn't have to do anything. I was free to do everything that I wanted to do, anything that I wanted to do. He had greater possessions of herds and flocks. He got into kind of animal husbandry, you could say ranching or something like that, but, I mean, that's kind of a cool thing, breeding stock and seeing, we talk about 4-H, kids when they get in a 4-H club and they're trying to breed stock and try to come up with the best stock. Don't you think Solomon was doing that? Coming up with lots of sheep and lots of goats and lots of cows and all that kind of, just having a great time, developing it and seeing it happen. He says, I also gathered for myself special treasures, silver and gold, and the special treasures of kings, the kings of the provinces. The silver and gold stuff, we got that, right? 666 talents of gold was his salary. Gold was kind of like, they didn't use currency, so that was the trade of the day. So he's lots of wealth, but he's getting these special treasures from the treasures of the kings of the provinces. So we saw that already once in his life where he, actually, if you were with us on Wednesday nights, we went through the life of Solomon when the Queen of Sheba visited him. And she brought this big entourage and brought gold and spices and stuff to give to him as a gift. He said, why would you give gifts to Solomon? He's got everything. Well, they do it it's kind of a dignitary thing to impress him, and it's kind of like an unofficial contest. It's like if Kevin goes and visits Solomon and gives him $100,000 worth of stuff, then I'm coming after him. I'm not going to give him less. I'm going to go, I got to beat that. So because we want to one up the person before us so that we get some sort of a connection with Solomon, and that's what they would do. And they bring treasures, whatever their skill and their abilities and their nation, their what they can bring. And I don't know if you guys have like hobbies. Yeah. 2 people do. Okay. The rest of you guys too busy to have hobbies. Okay. Well, it's not really a hobby, but internet stuff, you can sign up and get emails from stuff. And I get this one it's called Invaluable Auctions. And what they do is they just auction off all kinds of artwork. Some of it's paintings, some of it's sculptures, and it comes from all over the world. Some of it's really amazing, delicate, handcrafted stuff, and you just look at it and you go, that's awesome craftsmanship. And some of it's old, and some of it's, more modern. But it's just interesting to look at, and sometimes you go, oh, I'd love to have that. And I go, what would I do with that? I wouldn't have any use for it, but I just think that's just really cool, And Solomon's getting treasures like that, hand-carved things, delicate stuff, jade and ivory and, all this kind of silver, gold. And he's getting these, he said, I'm just gathering this stuff. And you know what he said the benefit of that was? When you get all that stuff, you get to look at it. That's it. I mean, you think, that's it? Well, yeah, think about it. You guys, you know what the Hermitage is? And it used to be a palace in Russia. Now they turn it into a museum. Gold and stuff. And when you walk through it the first time, you walk, oh, wow. And then you realize people lived here. You think they went around every day going, oh, wow. No, they just lived there and walked through it. It's like, yeah, that's gold, whatever. Because all you get to do is look at it. It doesn't make your life any better. You don't live a better life because you have gold walls. It's just life, right? And he's going, oh, you get to look at it. But see, a lot of us think, well, if I had more stuff, I'd feel good. And he goes, if you get more stuff, you can look at it. But it won't make your life better. Imagine the extravagance that Solomon was received. Sculptures and, from gifted art, craftsmanship and paintings. I realized, when I made this list, I'm thinking, sculptures, they wouldn't have done sculptures because they're Jewish. They hated, don't make any images of, well, wait, what about the time? Solomon led the nation into idolatry. They would have had no compulsion about receiving sculptures and stuff like that. They'd already abandoned that whole idolatry thing. They were into idolatry. So no doubt these guys would have brought them all kinds of, every manner of work of art, jewelry and craftsmanship, delicate stuff, some of that stuff that we look at and go, yeah, it's a watch, it's a pendant, it's something. But you look at it and you think, dang, somebody had some, incredible skill to put this thing together, to create these settings for this thing and develop. It's amazing craftsmanship, and he would have gotten all that kind of thing. And then he goes into music. He looks into music, and I think most of us can appreciate the power and the beauty and the importance of music. I mean, even if you're not like totally into it, you realize it's like, oh, music can move people. It has emotional impact on people. Yesterday we were at a local high school football game. I'm part of the hosting for the visiting team. The kids get off the bus. Literally, every single kid had earphones in. I mean, they either had the little wireless earphones, or for their smartphones, or they got the big old cool headphones, like that. And it's like, but they're listening to it all the way up in the bus. They're doing it as the game preparation. As soon as they get done with the game, change out their clothes, boom, the earphones and headphones go right back on because music's just interwoven as part of their lives. That's just the way it is, right? And so we kind of get that. We like music, generally speaking. Solomon said, yeah, I acquired male and female singers, vocalists. You think he had average singers? That guy's a king. He's not a king. He's a wealthy, prominent king. I'm sure that he had people auditioning individuals to say, okay, no, we're not just taking average people. You do realize that that's the way it is with vocalists as well as, I think of athletics. In athletics, people have general athletic ability, and they can be, even college level, pretty good athlete. But then you step into the professional level, and it's like, oh, that's a whole different elite class. Those guys are way more than the college people, way higher abilities. And then within the professional class, you have some that are like, they are standout superstars within an entire generation. People like Michael Jordan, like LeBron James. It's like, they're not just good professional athletes, they're like in a whole other class. And it's the same way with musicians. You have good ones, and you have capable ones, and you have outstanding ones, and then you have an elite class that just the way they're able to sing, the voice, the control, the presentation, you just go, oh my gosh. How many of you guys ever watched America's Got Talent? Okay, if you haven't watched it, you're kind of familiar with the idea. It's like talent contest thing. And what I think is fascinating is when you have the judges who are professional musicians themselves, most often professionals, and they're judging people every week. So they see multiple acts every week, multiple people every week, and they go, oh, you're pretty good, we want to encourage you. But every once in a while, there's somebody that comes along, and I love hearing them, but I also love seeing the impact on the judges. When the judges are going, these are people who see and hear so much, and all of a sudden they're going, this is amazing, this is outstanding, this is spectacular. I saw one example. A little girl got up and she sang this song. She said, what are you going to sing for us today? And she told the name of the song, and the lady goes, oh, that's a big song. She knew the song, and she knew what was going to require to do it. The little girl starts singing it, and the lady stands up, stunned, just going, and I think, that's cool. That's describing that little girl as she's up in that stellar range, and that's what the Solomon would have gotten, whether it's vocalists, men or women, or all kinds of instruments. And he's a musician. He would have just been, enjoying all that stuff, and yet he's going to tell us it was empty. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not enough to live for. It's not enough to give your life meaning. It says, I became great, and I excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem, and my wisdom remained with me also. So, unrivaled greatness and still wisdom. He says, whatever my eyes desired, I didn't keep from them. Oh, would that get you in trouble? Anything that you see that you want, you get it, right? And he says, I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. Now, obviously, that's broad range, broad, could be a lot of things he's thinking about, but it certainly includes sexual pleasure. I mean, the guy had 700 wives and 300 concubines, right? So he's going to tell us, it's like, pleasure, it's passing. And this is a guy who at one time, we get the clear revelation from Song of Solomon, at one time he knew what love was. But he apparently walked away from that into sensual pleasure. 700 wives, you go, okay, dude, you can probably speak about sexual pleasure and be way more authoritative than any of us. But he's going, it doesn't mean anything. It's not enough. But see, it's not that sex is bad. It's designed by God. It's intended by God to be within the context of one man and one woman as husband and wife in a faithful relationship over a lifetime. He says, in that setting, it's awesome, it's fulfilling, it's pleasurable, it's exciting, it's meaningful, it's deep. But if you change the formula and say, oh, it's not between one man and one woman, it's between two men. Or you go, oh, no, it's not between a husband and wife, it's between anybody and anybody. And it's not within a context of faithfulness in marriage, it's just, we just want to do it. He says, don't you realize when you do that, you diminish the power and the importance and the purpose of sex. It's intended to be this intimate thing between a husband and a wife to please each other, not just, I just want to have sex. I just want to have the pleasure. You go, well, if that's all it is just pleasure, you're going to find out it's diminishing return. And we see that with people. And they start down that road, they go, well, I had this girl last night and I got to get another one tomorrow night and another, because they're looking for something new and they got to keep going beyond and further because that doesn't satisfy anymore because it's only pleasure. And see, that's our culture tells us, yeah, it's just a biological act. And God goes, oh no, it's much more than that. I intended it to be something wonderful for a husband and wife. Solomon pursued that, and he says, look, guys, I rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my rejoice for my labor, or my reward for my labor. Okay, remember he's talked about all these projects and building. He says, I worked hard at that stuff, and it was pretty fun doing it. That was my reward. I enjoyed the process. Some of you guys are builders, and you know what he's talking about. It's fun to work. Right? You're there, it's work, it's still labor, but you do it and you go, this is fun, we're accomplishing something. You can have a hard day at work, and if you accomplish something, you go, that was a good day. Right? It was fun doing it. And you get done with the project, and you don't go, my life is satisfied now. You get done, and you go, okay, what's next? He says, but you had fun while you were doing it, you enjoyed the labor, but it's not meaningful for your whole life. Some of you guys will relate to that when you go, I've built a lot of homes up in this community. And you drive by them and you go, I built that house. Okay? Did it make your life meaningful? Not really. It just work. It was a project. I finished it. I think I did a good job, but that's all it is. He says, I looked at all the works that my hands had done, all the labor in which I had toiled. Indeed, all was vanity, empty, grasping for the wind. There's no profit under the sun. It's going, that doesn't make my life meaningful. I mean, some of you guys worked hard in your jobs, not necessarily in construction, but in lots of other ways. And you go, when I get done and look back on it, it's like, my life's not important because I worked. Even though I worked hard and did a good job, that doesn't make my life valuable. He says, so I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. Now, this is a freebie. It's not really part of the Bible study, but something I wondered when I read this, if Solomon would be able to write this book if he had one of these. And you know why I say that? He says, I turned to consider. He had to think without distraction and without interruption. And don't you think if Solomon had a smartphone, that he would get like 1 million texts and a bunch of people calling him, and he'd be like, leave me alone. I'd like to think. Think for a minute. I'd like to think for a minute. Just leave me alone. I don't know if I'm nobody. And it's like, I get texts, and he's like, I'm trying to do a Bible study. It's like, I can't talk right now. I can't talk right now. I can't talk right now. And it's like, just turn it off so you can actually think. And I don't know, maybe you don't have that problem. I'm not saying don't text me. I'm not saying that. I have the ability to turn off if I don't want to, or if I want to, but I think, would Solomon have ever thought deep thoughts if he had been annoyed with the kinds of things that we're annoyed with that constantly steal our attention? And so he says, what can a man do who succeeds the king? Only what's already been done. I mean, he's thinking about that in terms of his father, but he's also thinking in terms of his son. He says, my son's going to become king. He's going to succeed me. What's he going to do? Build stuff. I did that. Get some chicks. Did that. I'm going to gather stuff. I did that. I'm going to get some music. I did that. He's going. You can't come up with anything new. Now it might be new to Rehoboam, his son, but it's not new. And for us, we go, I did something never been heard of. And you go, yeah, it has. You just never did it before. So it's new to you, but hey, dude, there's nothing new under the sun. Whatever you're doing, it's already been done before. And he says, I saw, it's not a fatalistic position of like, oh, it doesn't matter how you live then. He says, no, I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. So wisdom's better by far. It's like as much better as light is to darkness. A wise man's eyes are in his head. He sees and perceives, but the fool walks in darkness. And you know what it's like to walk in darkness if you ever do it in your house. It's never a good situation, right? Something's left in the ground, didn't know it was there, ouch, boom, right? He says that's what it's like for a fool. They don't see things. He says, yet I myself perceive that the same event happens to all. So they say, I'm going to live wise then. Great. Guess what? You're still going to die. That's what he's saying. It's like, wisdom's better, but you're still going to die. He says, I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. Why was I more wise then? Well, because wisdom's better, but it doesn't solve the death problem. I said in my heart, this is vanity. So I live a totally wise life, and guess what? I'm still going to die. Some Christians get mad about that. What? No, you serve the Lord, awesome. Guess what? Nobody gets out of this life. Unless the Lord comes in the rapture, all of us are going to die. Doesn't matter how wise you lived. And that's what Solomon's saying. You can live a totally wise life, but you're still going to die. And Solomon says, that seems messed up. Okay? There's no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool. Since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. How does a wise man die? As a fool. Same for all of us. And we're all going to be forgotten. I know it's a sad thought, right? But you go forward a couple generations, nobody will know who you were. They'll look in the family album and go, huh, who's that guy? Right? You'll be forgotten. It's just the nature of life. I mean, it doesn't matter who we are. Even there's some amazing people. Sometimes when you dig into history, see somebody's biography, and you go, this is an awesome guy. Why did I know about him? Because we forgot him. And there's plenty of fools. You go, well, I don't know who that guy is. Yeah, because he lived like a fool, and we forgot him. You ever walk through a cemetery and look at gravestones? I mean, I'm saying that's a great pastime, but you walk through and you see these people's names. You go, I wonder who that person was. I wonder what their life was like. Because exactly what he's saying here, we get forgotten. I think it's personally. I understand why they do it. It's totally manipulative, insincere. But it seems like every tragedy where people die, some politician will get up and say, "We will never forget you." And the truth is, we will. Not because they weren't important, but that's just the nature of life. He says, therefore I hated life because of the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, and all is vanity and grasping for the wind. See, this is the despair and position of an atheist. It says, what is the point? If they think about life, they go, there's no meaning, there's no point, there's so much wrong with it. It's just too heavy, it's despairing, it's like grasping for the wind. And he says, then I hated the labor which I toiled under the sun. So he's looking back on all his effort, and he goes, I can't believe I've done all this stuff, and I have to leave it to the one who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or he will be a fool. I mean, he's thinking about his own son. And it's really interesting because you would think, wouldn't you think, you have 700 wives and 300 concubines. How could you come out of that with only one son? Right? But apparently that's the case. I mean, you look at it, I find it hard to believe that. But apparently, when Rehoboam comes, first of all, Rehoboam's the only one that's mentioned as a possibility. No other children are mentioned at all, which is kind of strange. And you go, wow, that's weird that nobody's mentioned it. But then when he comes into power, there's no struggle for his authority, which in David's life, because he had multiple sons, there was always struggle. This guy's trying to kill this guy's trying to, there's nothing like that. And you go, maybe he only had one. Seems like it. And if that's the case, doesn't that change your understanding of the book of Proverbs? Because Proverbs is written by Solomon to his son. And you think, well, yeah, he probably meant all of his sons. Like, which ones? There's only one that we know of. So if that book was really written to his son, you see how Solomon was trying to help his son be wise. And apparently Rehoboam didn't get the message. He didn't listen. One of the reasons we know this guy was a fool? When he became king, right at the start, the first thing, he thinks, I need some counsel on how to rule. Seems like a pretty good decision. You go, not a bad idea, buddy. You're an amateur at this. You're stepping into the throne. Get some counsel. So he turns to Solomon's counselors. You ever think about that? Wouldn't you be kind of impressed to meet somebody who was counseling Solomon? The wisest man that ever lived, and you're counseling him? It's like, whoa, wow, I'm impressed with you, buddy. But so he turns to them. They give him counsel. They say, Dad was kind of hard on people. Taxes were high. Kind of just roll it back, and you'll win people's hearts. Good counsel. He rejects it immediately and turns to his friends who are his same age that grew up with him, and he says, what do you guys think? That's foolish. Ask people who don't know any more than you, have no more experience or wisdom than you, say, would you give me some wise counsel? They cannot. If they had been honest, they would have said, we don't know anything. We're just like you. But instead they said, be a man, step up, crush these people under your thumb and make them obey you. And so he listens to them, and it divides the country in half. He loses 10 tribes. Good decision, buddy. You just cut yourself off. But that's the kind of fool that he was. He says, I don't know whether he'll be wise or be a fool, but he's going to rule over all my labor, which I have toiled, in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. So that's messed up. This is vanity. It's empty. And we've seen tons of examples of this throughout history, recent history in the United States. We see example after example of people some father who builds an empire, a business empire, and turns it over to his son, and the guy blows it up and wastes it all and falls apart. And you go, yeah, it happens. Sometimes they're fools. He says, I turned to my heart and I despaired of all the labor which I had toiled under the sun. There is a man whose labor is with wisdom and knowledge and skill, and yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This is vanity and a great evil. He says, they don't know the first thing. They never worked. They don't know how to do it, right? So he's going, that's just not right. But that's why they call it work. He worked. He worked hard, and that's one of the reasons people look forward to weekends and vacations and retirement, because they labor. They work. And so they're going, I can't wait till I get to the weekend, because then I don't have to work. I can just relax. I can rest. I can get a little bit of pleasure, have a little bit of fun, right? That's what we kind of look for. Vacations. What do we do on vacations? Run ourselves ragged most of the time. But, the idea is that we get to do something other than work, right? And Solomon's going, I've worked my whole life. I worked hard, and I've accumulated and built, and now I'm going to have to turn the product of all that labor over to somebody else. He says, that just doesn't seem right. Now, some of the stuff is, as we look at it, you're probably going, this is really depressing. I don't know why I came to church this morning, right? And if it bothers you, this perspective of life without God is meaningless, and it bothers you, that's good. Because that's the truth. You know, we have a lot of people that are growing up with no understanding or no idea, no concept, no thought of God. And so they're just living like Solomon says, just under the sun. And they're trying to find meaning, and they're experiencing thing after thing that goes, it doesn't satisfy, it's empty, and it seems pointless, and actually the whole thing seems pointless. Yeah, because it is without God. It doesn't mean that you can't find good in some things, but it's never enough to make your life meaningful. And that's what he's saying. Without God, it is meaningless. Without the revelation of who you are and who created us and where you came from and where you can be going, it doesn't have any meaning. When you approach life as an atheist or an agnostic, it should lead and does lead to despair. It leads to hedonism, where you go, well, the best thing we can do is just have a lot of fun. And don't we see a lot of adults and children, or older people and younger adults, living for pleasure? So it's just, I want to get money, I want to travel, I want to do this, I want to do all this kind of stuff, because they're hoping that somehow that's going to bring meaning to their lives. And Solomon's going, let me tell you, save you the time. Don't invest your life in those things, because they don't work. And they're going to be empty, and you're going to come away disappointed. It used to be about 3% of our nation claimed to be atheists. But because of the influence of our educational system, we're seeing now the statistic that 23% of our country claims to either be atheists or agnostics or nothings, nons. I don't believe in anything in particular. And you go, don't you see that translates into the moral decay? It's like, well, I just do whatever, or sleep with whoever, or go whatever, or try to find meaning somewhere, somehow. It's a very insightful picture that Solomon gives us here. There is good available to us. And that's part of that passing pleasure. There is pleasure in many of these things, right? Solomon says, look, if you're going to live without God, there's nothing better than to eat and drink, that you should enjoy the good in your labor. He says, I saw this was something that God actually has allowed goodness or pleasure to be in these things. And he says, this isn't by accident, this is by design. And he says, look, who can eat and drink more, who can eat or have more enjoyment than I? Well, obviously, none of us can compete with him. But he's going, isn't it interesting? He has the max in everything, and he says, just trust me, it's empty. Doesn't matter how far you go into it, it's empty. You want to just live without God, then just might as well have fun, because that's all there is. There is good, but the good doesn't make it all worthwhile. It's not enough to satisfy, or give meaning to our lives. The good that's there, like, you can go watch the sunset. Awesome, beautiful. Is it enough to make your life meaningful? No. But you can enjoy it. It doesn't, the fact that there's good doesn't change all of it. It doesn't fix everything. It doesn't bring meaning and purpose without God. You can and you should enjoy the good, but not to live for it. Right? It's enjoy it, fine, absolutely. It's okay to have a sense of accomplishment. You do a job, you do it well. It's okay to go, I feel good that I did this job well. And it's certainly okay to have joy in doing things out of love, because that's the greatest reason there is to do something. Two personal illustrations of this, the contrast between having a relationship with God and how it changes things versus not having one. Okay, these are personal illustrations, and you don't have to be impressed with them. They're just I was thinking about it, I thought, I should tell them this story. We have teams that occasionally go short-term mission teams, and we've gone to the Philippines several times. We have a big commitment over there. We love those guys. So we try to help them whenever we can. One of the teams we brought over there, we said, we came over after a typhoon gone through there, and there was a lot of flooding. We helped them in Manila, and then they took us up to this other little church that was northern part of the city of Manila. And they took us up there, and what had happened, because of the flooding from the typhoon, they'd had erosion, the kind of river had come down, and right next to the church, it had eaten away it's like a 2-story church, and it had eaten all the ground away from the foundation. And so they were like, we got to fix this, because otherwise we're going to lose our church. And so we show up, a bunch of people, we got high school kids and adults, and we show up and say, we're here to serve. And they go, great. We want you to take those rocks from that field over there and put them in this hole. Now, I'm like, what? I didn't pay $1,000 to come over here and grab rocks, But that's what they needed, right? So we go, okay, well, we'll go do that. So here we are, a bunch of Americans. We all spent a bunch of money to come over there, and we're in this field, which is like the stuff that was there was stuff from buildings that they'd torn down, broken up, threw it, and it was just a bunch of rubbish. So we're over there, and it's all overgrown. It's Philippines, tropics, right? It's all overgrown with these vines, and they're saying, yeah, there's a bunch of rocks over there. Go get. It's like, how are we supposed to? Just dig them out with your hands. Okay, so we're over there grabbing these big old rocks and grabbing concrete, pieces of concrete. It's all covered with mud. It's hot, and we're sweating. And I'm thinking the whole time, it's like, they have snakes in the Philippines. And this is like totally snake territory, I'm just going, if we don't get bit, I'll be surprised. So we're grabbing these things, and we spend the whole day, all of us spend the whole day, work really hard, and the sum total of what we did was we threw heavy rocks in a hole. Now, if there's no eternal perspective on that, you're going, that is empty. That is like total waste of our time, efforts, and energy. But with an eternal perspective, you go, wait a second. God said that he would not forget our labor of love in that we have ministered to and do minister to the saints. We served those guys in a way that they needed help. They didn't have the money to fill it up, and we had a bunch of us no-talent Americans, so we just did it, and you go, well, it changes the whole thing. Instead of being bitter about it and going, that was pointless, we spent our, it's like, okay, Lord, it was different than what we expected, but we helped them. Right? And it has eternal value to that. The other part was, I think of Dr. John, and we do medical teams, and often the people that we run into on the medical teams, they do an analysis, diagnosis of what's going on with them. They're dealing with parasites and worms and malaria, and we can give them medicine. Well, not me, but Dr. Miller can prescribe medicines for them, and they can get rid of the worms, they get rid of the parasites, and they can cure the malaria for a very short time. Because they go back and they'll get more worms and they'll get other parasites, and next malaria season, if they're in the malaria area, they're going to get that again. And so you go, we don't really, that's assuming they take the medicine properly, which sometimes is challenging. But you say, well, that's not a permanent change in their lives. Does anybody have a pill that we could give people that would give them perfect health for the rest of their lives? If you got it, please tell Dr. Miller. We'll buy some, But no, it's only temporary, but it helps people temporarily. So what we're saying is we love you, and we can help you with some of these things, but it's only temporary. It's not going to fix your life. It's not going to fix everything for you. But the fact that we do it in love for the Lord, it has eternal value, even though what we did is very temporary and passing. Solomon says, God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight, but to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. So isn't it amazing? You see people who are not good, they're sinners, and they accumulate great amount of wealth, but when they die, they leave it. And sometimes they leave it, and it ends up going to ministries, or it goes to people who are good, somebody in their family, and you go, he says, that seems, they spent their whole life pursuing evil, and then all that they've accumulated ends up in the hands of someone who loves God. So not always, but there's times that happens. He says, doesn't that make that guy's life kind of seem like empty? And some of this stuff, admittedly, is kind of sobering or depressing or whatever, or it's dark, heavy, and I understand that. But the good news is that this illustration works for me, that when you have a precious gem, when you have a valuable diamond jewelers, those guys, they put them on display against a black backdrop so that you can see the beauty, the refractive light qualities, the facets of a diamond, and then say, this is an awesome gem. And in a sense, what God's doing is say, compared to the darkness of the backdrop of this life, don't you see the beauty of the gospel, the good news of what God's done for us? Jesus says he came to give us life, and that more abundantly. It's a different quality of life. It's lived for eternal purposes. It has eternal rewards involved in it. It has eternal meaning and value. Matthew 6:33 says, look, just seek the kingdom of God first, and his righteousness, all the things you need will be added unto you. If you delight yourself in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart. I mean, he gives us tremendous meaning. Our lives become tremendously meaningful. They have tremendous purpose and value. And the simplest things that we do for the Lord, I mean, it's crazy when you look at it. He says, one illustration, he says, if you give a cup of cold water to another person in Jesus' name, he says, you will not lose your reward. I mean, could there be anything that would seem less significant? And he says, if you do that in my name, there's an eternal reward for you. And it's that way with everything that we do for him and for the kingdom of heaven. And he goes, you realize there's an inheritance. It's reserved in heaven for you. It's undefiled. It fades not away. It's reserved in heaven for you. He says it's a place that's not limited by the vanity of this life. It's a place of perfection and paradise. It's a place where everything that you have there, he says, no, rust doesn't corrupt here. Moth doesn't destroy it. Thieves don't break in and steal it. It's eternally valuable. It's not the temporary stuff that goes, this is good for a little while. I mean, if heaven was like that, nothing that we get there would last. And he says, no, it's all eternal. I mean, the smallest thing, he goes, this is going to be good forever. This is going to be valuable forever. And you see how it changes everything for us. And so it's really gives eternal implications to every action, every word, every thought, every deed. And it makes your life so meaningful, so purposeful. And it's all because of Jesus. Let's pray together. Lord, I thank you for freeing us from this vanity. Lord, I thank you that you intended us to see the emptiness of this life so we might look above the sun, like not live just under the perspective of this life is all that there is. And Lord, thank you for your goodness, that you are good and you subjected this creation to futility in hope. You did this so that in your hope was that we might look above and look to you and find your salvation and a relationship with you through Jesus Christ. And Lord, that we might understand the meaning and purpose for our lives. Though they're short and it passes so quickly, Lord, and we seem so frail and unable to make it all make sense, Lord, when we trust in you and put our lives in your hands, you show us what it's all about. Make our lives meaningful, purposeful, and valuable. Thank you for your grace and love. In Jesus' name.